What's up, guys? Racing Nation TV here, back with another video, and I just wanted to talk about the whole Colton Herta situation with the super licenses. I said a couple things on Twitter last night, and it's really just been getting my brain going. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I just needed to sit down and kind of talk about it. Kind of just going off script here, so if it's a little bit jumbled, please excuse me. There's a lot of things in my brain I want to talk about as an American. As a IndyCar fan, I've been an IndyCar fan since, my entire life, but I've been following the series in depth since around 2014. And Colton was a driver, has only been a driver since 19. So I've seen his whole career to this point. I feel like I have a lot to say about this because I've seen just F1 fans across the pond just that don't watch IndyCar just up in arms. You know, how can a driver who never even went to F2 be possibly going to F1, just all that. So I just wanted to talk about it. Before I get into it, make sure you go down below and hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a lot because I'm sure I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this as it continues to move forward. So let's get into it. So basically, if you've been living under a rock, what's happening is Colton Herta basically has a deal done, from what Helmut Marko said, the guy over at Red Bull, that if he can get an exemption for a super license, then he will essentially be an F1 driver next season for AlphaTauri. And honestly, it's a little bit disappointing, honestly, because the super licenses in general, because I think it takes away from, a lot of opportunities that, great drivers could have in trying F1. You don't have to go through the ladder. You don't have to race in F2 to go to F1, in my opinion. You don't even have, in a Premier Series, you shouldn't have to be an F1 driver first. I don't think the super license should be what is standing in Colton's way to make it to F1. I think that's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous, quite honestly. And it's basically what it comes down to is Colton has 32 points for his last 3 seasons in IndyCar, because it accounts for the previous 3 seasons of your career. And because of COVID, it would be 4, but Indy Lights only had 6 or 7 entries when he finished second in the championship that year. So that doesn't count towards his points. And if that did count, then he would have the points. And that's what they're trying to get the exemption for, which it's not Colton's fault. The Indy Lights had 7 entries, but just putting that out, that's like the reason. And that gets me thinking about all the team bosses who think rules are rules and COVID shouldn't be an excuse because it didn't prevent him from racing Indy cars. Well, sure, it didn't prevent him from racing Indy cars throughout 2020. That's fair enough. But if this rule applies, if this exemption applies, that it's the previous 4 years and not 3, if one of the years is 2020, then if any other driver can use it, why can't Colton? The rule that team bosses should be arguing against is that they should be saying, to sound smarter, that Indy Lights had 7 entries, don't count, it shouldn't count. The rules are rules, which I guess fair enough, but that, like I said, that is stupid. That is dumb. Like, it's Colton Herta racing in that series had no control on the amount of entries. It's confusing to me. I don't understand what the deal with the exemption is. And on top of that, he has won 7 IndyCar races. He's only 22 years old, and he won in his 3rd start at 18. He beat Scott Dixon by half a second for the pole at Nashville, the tightest street circuit that we have, probably the most difficult. The first year that we went there, on the same experience everybody else had, half a second faster. To me, that says that's a guy that literally is probably the most raw talent drivers in the field. You look at the end of 2021. That's what I look at when I look at Colton, as probably the best driving he has done in his IndyCar career to date, because I mean, early in the season that last year, there were a lot of times where he should have won as well. But I mean, Nashville should have won it. That was a stupid race. That was just a dumb race. So much happened. He dominated the thing, and he just found himself having to catch Marcus Ericsson at the end because he lost the lead off of pit sequence and a strategy that shouldn't have happened because Ericsson got there from causing a yellow and having to pit early by flying over the back of someone, and made a mistake. I mean, he made a mistake, but I mean, he should have won that race. Gateway, just car dropped, something broke in the back end. Again, I think he was leading at that time too. He was at least in the top 3, should have won that race. And then he wins Laguna Seca, and then he wins Long Beach. I always forget Long Beach was the season finale. So I mean, there's a span of like 5 races at the end of last year that you should really go watch if you want to be educated on IndyCar and see what Colton Herta is all about before you make assumptions. There's really a span last year that he should have really been on fire, and I don't think the amount of mistakes and kind of the stigma that Colton is bad under pressure comes from, because I mean, you look at the Indy GP this year where he won, just absolute masterclass of strategy to get him to the front. I think he was in the lead by lap 10. Torrential rain, absolutely could not see a thing, and just we obviously saw early in the race the car controllability, just among many things we've seen Colton do over the years. That was a race that you can look at and say, okay, yeah, that guy's great, but that wasn't a surprise to us at the time because we know Colton's great. It's unbelievable to me to see the amount of people in Europe who are F1 fans and only watch F1. There's kind of this F1 or nothing kind of mentality, and over here we've had that. We haven't really had that, I don't think. I think there's a NASCAR or nothing kind of mentality a little bit, but really, I mean, a lot of people that I know, most people I think in the States, we watch F1, we watch NASCAR, we watch IndyCar, sprint car racing. I bet you don't even know what that is if you're from Europe. IMSA, sports car racing. We watch WEC. I'll occasionally watch MotoGP. Like, it's not a. We're not just in an F1 bubble, and you shouldn't be. There's so much motorsports on this planet that you should be enjoying and watching, in my opinion. And I think the drivers. That's why I think. I mean, one of the coolest things in racing that I've said for years is when an F1 driver comes and tries IndyCar or vice versa. And when drivers can't race in F1 because of the super license deal, I mean, like, someone shouldn't have to. If like Scott Dixon, if Scott Dixon wanted to race in F1, he shouldn't have to race in F2 to get the super license points. Like, at a minimum, out of all this, IndyCar should award the same amount of points as F2. It's the same car, same, well, not the same car, but it's both Dallara chassis. They have around the same horsepower. I think IndyCar is a little bit more, and I think the IndyCar weighs about 10 kilograms more. So they're the same thing, but for some reason IndyCar just gets less love, and that's because F1 wants to favor their feeder series, which I understand, but it has to change. It just has to change. There's so many exciting young talents in IndyCar who maybe are running IndyCar because they can't afford to race in F2 anymore, or it's just the best option for them at this point in their career. Because I mean, F1 and it's totally different, because you see Lundgaard, he was an Alpine Academy driver. Callum Ilott is here, and he was a Ferrari Academy driver. Simply could have been F1 drivers, but there is not enough space. And to see that Colton has an opportunity to actually go from IndyCar, that should be exciting. That is exciting. But it's just frustrating that the only thing that is in his way is a super license. It should not be what's, between him and an F1 seat. It is ridiculous. So I kind of wanted to. I think I've rambled on a little bit too long here. I just wanted to give my American side to it. Because I mean, I just from being over here and seeing all this, chatter from overseas, I just, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. And so, if you want to try and enlighten me down in the comments below, please do. Please tell me if you're an F1 fan, if your mentality is F1 or nothing, you don't watch any other motorsports. Tell me why Colton Herta isn't valuable or isn't worthy of an F1 seat. Tell me why. I don't get it. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'll make another video, depending on how the Colton Herta news goes. Or maybe there'll be some other content to be had here. I'm just glad I got to wear my Colton Herta Big Chungus shirt and rant about things for 12 minutes.